In 1979, a monumental revolution erupted in Iran, bringing down the rule of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. This wasn't just a change of leadership, it was a political earthquake, one that would ripple across the Middle East for decades to follow. The Shah, widely viewed as a pro-Western autocrat and a staunch ally of both the United States and the United Kingdom, was ousted. His fall meant the collapse of the Pahlavi dynasty and the end of Iran's imperial state. It marked the beginning of a new Islamic theocracy. At the heart of this historic upheaval was a young cleric, Ali Khamenei, a close disciple of Ayatollah Khomeini, the ideological mastermind and symbolic figurehead of the revolution. Khamenei quickly rose through the ranks of the new Islamic Republic. By 1981, he was appointed as Iran's third president, a role that, at the time, held more ceremonial weight than actual executive power. But after Khomeini's death in 1989, the trajectory of Khamenei's life and of Iran itself changed forever. He was selected as the country's second supreme leader, a position of immense power that he has held for over 3 decades, fundamentally shaping Iran's domestic and foreign policy. More than 35 years later, that very establishment, the one built and consolidated under Khamenei's oversight, finds itself under siege. In recent months, Israel has launched unanticipated and highly coordinated strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities and has carried out targeted assassinations of top Iranian military commanders. Iran responded with waves of ballistic missile attacks. As tensions escalated, the United States joined the fray, bombing several strategic Iranian sites. Now, under a tenuous and fragile ceasefire, reports suggest that Khamenei has gone into hiding and has discreetly named 3 high-ranking clerics as potential successors should his death become imminent. So, who exactly is Ali Khamenei? He's arguably one of the most powerful and divisive figures in modern Middle Eastern history, a man who has consistently called for the destruction of Israel, labeled the United States as the Great Satan, and supported Syria's Bashar al-Assad throughout a brutal civil war that devastated the country for over a decade. And now he may be facing the twilight of his long, hardline rule. Born into a devout clerical family, Khamenei came of age in a turbulent Iran and studied under Ayatollah Khomeini, the very man who would later spearhead the revolution and assume the role of the Islamic Republic's first supreme leader. Khamenei was an active opponent of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi during the 1960s and 70s, and for his dissent he was arrested and imprisoned multiple times. When the Islamic Revolution succeeded in 1979 and the Shah was forced into exile, Khomeini triumphantly returned to Tehran from his exile in France, welcomed by euphoric crowds and fervent public support. Khamenei, now a trusted figure within the revolutionary movement, quickly ascended politically. He served on the Islamic Revolutionary Council, acted as deputy defense minister, and played a key role in establishing the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, a force that would grow to become one of the most powerful institutions within Iran. In 1981, Khamenei narrowly survived an assassination attempt, likely carried out by a leftist faction opposed to the new regime. The blast left his right arm permanently paralyzed. Just months later, in the aftermath of a devastating political assassination that killed both the president and prime minister of Iran, Khamenei stood for election and, in an uncontested race, won the presidency with an overwhelming 95% of the vote. As president, his primary focus was on consolidating clerical authority and navigating the grueling 8-year war with Iraq. On the global stage, he advocated for unity among Third World nations, famously addressing the UN in 1987 to rally support against increasing US pressure. Then came a major geopolitical turning point, the collapse of the Cold War in 1989. That same year, Ayatollah Khomeini passed away. Just months earlier, his designated successor, Ayatollah Montazeri, had been dismissed for promoting ideas of political openness and pluralism. In a somewhat unexpected move, Iran's Assembly of Experts, a clerical council, chose Khamenei to succeed Khomeini as supreme leader, despite Khamenei not holding the senior clerical rank of Marja, Grand Ayatollah, which the constitution required. The laws were swiftly amended to prioritize political awareness and revolutionary commitment over purely religious credentials. Simultaneously, the office of the presidency was expanded in power, setting up a delicate dual authority dynamic. Over the years, Khamenei's leadership has frequently clashed with the presidents who served under him. His deeply conservative ideology often came into conflict with attempts at reform and liberalization, such as those proposed by President Rafsanjani in the 1990s and President Mohammad Khatami after his election in 1997. The pattern continued with President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who was initially seen as a loyalist but eventually defied the supreme leader. The disputed 2009 election, which kept Ahmadinejad in office, triggered Iran's largest protests since the revolution, a movement known as the Green Movement. The regime, under Khamenei's direction, responded with a violent and wide-scale crackdown. In 2015, President Hassan Rouhani, a moderate, brokered a landmark nuclear deal with major world powers, with Khamenei's cautious blessing. But while the supreme leader permitted the agreement, he blocked broader domestic reforms. Rouhani's failure to deliver economic relief, especially after Donald Trump unilaterally withdrew from the deal in 2018 and reinstated harsh sanctions, led to widespread unrest. By late 2019, massive protests erupted across the country, with chants of death to the dictator aimed directly at Khamenei. According to international reports, Iranian security forces acting under Khamenei's orders killed approximately 1,500 demonstrators. Another major flashpoint came in 2022 with the death of Mahsa Amini, a young woman arrested by the morality police for allegedly violating Iran's strict hijab rules. Her death ignited months of nationwide protests, with increasing calls for the end of clerical rule altogether. Khamenei dismissed the uprising as being fueled by foreign interference, yet the scale and persistence of the unrest signaled a growing crisis of legitimacy. Throughout his rule, Khamenei has consistently viewed the West with suspicion. Even as president in 1981, he vowed to root out liberalism, leftist ideologies, and Western, particularly American, influence. Although he didn't oppose the 2015 nuclear agreement outright, he repeatedly warned Rouhani not to trust the U.S. After Trump abandoned the deal, Khamenei said it only proved his point. When the U.S. killed General Qasem Soleimani in a 2020 drone strike, one of Khamenei's most trusted allies, he vowed severe revenge. Iran's missile barrage on American bases in Iraq was called a slap in the face, though Khamenei emphasized that the real battle would be ideological and strategic, not just military. This strategy culminated in what he dubbed the Axis of Resistance, a network of allied groups and governments throughout the region, including Syria, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iraq's Popular Mobilization Forces, the Houthi rebels in Yemen, and various Palestinian factions. This alliance was formed with the goal of pushing U.S. influence out of the region entirely. Following the collapse of Bashar al-Assad's regime in 2024 after a quarter-century of rule, Khamenei accused Israel and the United States of conspiring to bring about Assad's downfall. Iran, along with Russia, had propped up Assad's regime militarily and diplomatically since the 2011 uprising, a war that ultimately claimed more than 500,000 lives. Hostility between Iran and Israel has been a constant since 1979, when Khamenei declared the final Friday of Ramadan as Quds Day, a pro-Palestinian day of solidarity and opposition to Israel's existence. Khamenei continued this legacy, publicly calling for Israel's eradication on multiple occasions. For over 30 years, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly warned that Iran was on the brink of acquiring nuclear weapons. Despite consistent U.S. intelligence assessments to the contrary, Netanyahu insisted that drawing a red line was the only way to prevent Iran from developing the bomb. In 2002, he even urged the U.S. Congress to invade Iraq, alleging nuclear collaboration between Iraq and Iran, a claim later proven baseless when no weapons of mass destruction were found. Now, more than 3 decades after his initial warnings, Israel has finally launched sweeping attacks against Iran, striking nuclear facilities, eliminating high-level scientists and military leaders, and killing scores of civilians. The timing was striking. The attacks occurred just days before fresh negotiations were set to resume, between U.S. and Iranian officials. As the conflict escalated, the U.S. entered the battlefield, conducting its own airstrikes against Iran's nuclear infrastructure. With a fragile ceasefire now in place, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei has disappeared from public view. Reports suggest he has privately selected 3 senior clerics who could succeed him if he is killed in the growing conflict.